Jaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatadi Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Radha 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 Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jaya, Giri Govardhan Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tadati Swapadantikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Chakatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhescha Kripasindubheva Patitanam Bhavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for attending. So today we're going to do the second analogy and try to say something on this. So let's begin. The scorching heat of the sun evaporates water from the seas, rivers, lakes, and reservoirs, and there is little water anywhere. The people become thirsty and always look overhead for rain, but in despair. Yet just at the right moment, torrents of rain begin to fall everywhere in the land, even on the hard stones, and the land becomes overflooded. So the purport, the welfare state imposes upon its citizens scorching taxes in various forms: income tax, sales tax, land tax, terminal tax, excise tax, customs tax, and so many other taxes. But in due course, when the taxes accumulate into a large sum of money, they are utilized for the welfare of the citizens in various ways. Nonetheless, sometimes it happens that the benefits of all of the taxes fall like rain on stone-hearted men in the state who are unable to utilize the money properly and who squander it for sense gratification. The common man supposes the unequal distribution of rain too represents nature's wrath of our sinful acts. There is truth in this. Thus, to have an equal distribution of state-raised taxes, the citizens need to be scrupulously honest and virtuous. They should be honest in the payment of taxes to the state and should have honest representatives to look over the administration. In the modern setup of democratic states, and citizens can have no cause for grievances because the whole administration is conducted by the people themselves. If the people themselves are dishonest, the administrative machinery must be corrupt. Although a damned government of people may be given a good or fancy name, if the people are not good, they cannot have good government. regardless of which party governs the administration. Therefore, good character is a consciousness of the mass of people, is the first principle necessary for a good government and equal distribution of wealth. In ancient days, the kings were taught lessons in political philosophy, by ideal teachers, and the citizens from village to village were taught the principles of self-realization according to the Vedic codes of both the material and spiritual upliftment of society. Therefore, the citizens were God-conscious and honest in their dealings, and the kings were responsible for the welfare of the state. The same basic principles are accepted in the democratic governments of the present day, for the irresponsible party of the people is always voted out of power and must yield to the responsible party for a better government. In the cosmic administration, there is only one party, which consists of servants of God and the responsible deities of the various planets maintain the cosmic law in terms of the orders of the Supreme Lord. But the people suffer on account of their own folly. And what is that folly? In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that people should perform yagyas or sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Anadbhavanti bhutani parjananyad anasambhavaha yagya bhavati prajanyo yagya karma samudbhavaha. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yagya, sacrifice, and yagya is born of prescribed duties. Bhagavad Gita 3:14. The Supreme is all-pervading. Therefore, people must learn to perform yagyas to satisfy the all-pervading Supreme Truth. There are different yagyas prescribed for different ages, and in the present age of iron industry, the yagya, in the present age of iron industry, the yagya that enlightens the mind of the masses of God consciousness is recommended. This process of yagya is called the Sankirtan yagya, or mass agitation for invoking man's lost spiritual consciousness. As soon as this movement is taken up through spiritual singing, dancing, and feasting, the people will automatically become obedient and honest. Obedience is the first law of discipline. The people have become disobedient to the laws of God, and therefore neither rain nor wealth is equally distributed. A man who is ultimately disobedient cannot have any good qualification. When disobedient leaders lead the disobedient people, the whole atmosphere of the administration becomes polluted and full of dangers, as when a blind man leads several other blind men. The state taxes, therefore, should be spent to build the character of people in general. That will bring happiness to the citizens of the state. Hare Krishna. So here we see that how this analogy of the rain being distributed, right? The heat evaporates the water from the seas, rivers and lakes, and then it comes down in the form of rain, and it pours everywhere on the land, right? Whether it be on stones or on the ground, or on plants, or in the sea where it's not even needed, right? Water is not needed in the sea because the sea has plenty of water. But we find that it also rains on the sea. So so in that way, rain is basically, it falls all over, right? So now this is being compared to the modern day government and the taxes that they take from the people in general, and it's not being fully used the way it's supposed to be used, right? So we have experience of this, and let's hear from you now, right? So this is going to be a discussion from you about the modern day, scenario. We don't have to go far, we just open our phones and YouTube and, the news and anything. We can see what's going on in today's society, and we can also feel the effects of it, right? So let's hear from you now. So there's an option there for raising your hand. You can raise your hand and you can speak. Who likes to go first? Okay, maybe Charmaine, you can start it. Charmaine or Denton? Is Denton there? Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Denton. Maybe you can start it and then you can give some inspiration for the others to say something.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of money not being spent where it's supposed to be spent, we pay our taxes to the government, and I mean, it's quite evident when you look at the conditions of the roads. They're not kept up to, and the pavements. So one doesn't mind paying, like you mentioned early on. We must all pay our taxes, etc., etc. And it's lovely when you pay your taxes and you can actually see the benefits of what you're getting. But when you don't see the benefits, then you start to realize that it's money that's being misspent or not well spent. Yeah, that's my understanding of it.
Okay, just to contribute to that, you're talking about the roads and all that. So recently we had the flooding here in KZN, right, in Durban and surrounding areas, and we see many bridges were washed away, right? And the ratepayers actually, got together and they contributed out of their own funds to actually build some of those bridges, because they couldn't get to work, they couldn't get to the malls, to do their shopping, and they couldn't get anywhere. They were just stuck in the area. So they got together and they put the monies together and they built the bridges, in order for them to cross. So we see that, these irresponsible leaders who have actually taken the taxes from the people, but they are not giving back in terms of, building roads and the bridges due to the last floods. They're not doing anything about it. So in this way, we can, we experience it our firsthand. When I wanted to go to my sister's place in Kloof, and we had to use such a long route, going through this township and that township and the different areas until we get to Kloof, so it was like such a, because that one bridge had collapsed, so we had to divert our route. So yeah, we feel the effects of it, and petrol is not cheap anymore, and it's going up again, at 2 rand. So like the citizens are feeling the pinch of it. Yes. So anyone else would like to say something? Charmaine?
No.
You can lower your hand. How about Kajuta?
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. We have the same problem in my country.
especially people feeling frustration because they pay a lot from their salaries, and we never see this money back or any benefit in our lives. For example, we pay for health insurance, but when we need a doctor, we again pay for this. And it's like frustration at every step. But like devotees, we can think everything is from Krishna, and we work for Krishna, not for our benefit. And in this way, our frustration go away. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for that, Kajuta. Yes, you take shelter of Krishna and your frustration goes away. So, you don't feel so frustrated. But yes, the money is being squandered in some way or the other, right? And so as this verse is stating, the same thing is going on all around the world. And let's hear from someone else now. How about Sarat Sarvagya Das? Haribol Prabhu, would you like to say something? You can unmute and speak.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Mataji,
Krishna.
sorry, just now I joined, I couldn't follow Mataji then. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, Pranam, Mataji, are you getting?
Hare Krishna. And I was saying we're reading this
Hare,
verse,
yeah.
and so would you like to say something on this verse?
Actually, Mataji, just now I joined a little late, Mataji, I lost actually.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I was, yeah, sorry. Hare Krishna. Pranam.
No problem.
Pranam.
Anyone else would like to contribute to this topic? You're most welcome to this. How about Keshika? Keshika?
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So in this age of Kaliyuga, like the Gita says, religion becomes less and less, and people lose their way, and it becomes harder for them to follow Vedic literature. And the lifespan also becomes much more shorter. Like Guru Maharaj says, the power of chanting the name of Krishna, he affords us the ability to use his name. No matter how upset or no matter where we are, Srila Prabhupada says, no matter where we are, we can chant the name of Krishna. And he has given that power of his name to be himself in his actual form. So no matter how much we can be in despair, we can always call on his name. And if you think as a person, how difficult it is sometimes to call an adult by their name. If you recall as a child, it's very difficult to call someone by their name. But Krishna gives us that power and that friendship. In any relationship, he says, be my friend. In another relationship, you can be like Yashoda Maya. So you can always call on his name. And for me, that gives great comfort in chanting.
Oh, thank you so much, Keshika. Yes, the name of Krishna is, imbued with so much of power, right? That we call upon his name, and he is present in his holy names, and he hears to our cries, right? So thank you so much for that, Keshika. So if nobody else would like to speak on the subject, so what we'll do now, I will just go through, because in my last class, I didn't really touch on certain aspects of Puranjana stories. So we'll just go through that. In that, everybody is on the bodily concept of life. And Puranjana is actually indicating us, right? Living entities. And so we'll go through that now, and we'll, you know, see how that goes. So those who do not know the aim of life are no better than King Puranjana, meaning the of government officials, the president, the government officials, and the ministers, they all on the bodily concept of life, right? So the body is referred to the city of 9 gates, 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 2 nostrils, or the nose, mouth, genital, and anus. In this case, it's the city of Panchala, right? The body is called Panchala, the city of Panchala. We mentioned Chandavega on Sunday, which is time. Chandavega is the time aspect, and time swiftly passes away. And he has 360 soldiers that are compared to basically the days of the year. And before we know it, it's the end of the year. You know, like just now it was New Year's, right? And then we're already in the middle of the year, and it will soon be gone, and you know, will be the end of the year. So time is passing so swiftly, and before you know it, you know, it'll be time to leave this world. With each passing day, our lifespan becomes shorter. So there's a nice verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Ayur arati vaipumsham udhan astam chayan aso tasyarte tat shanonita utamashloka vartaya. Both by the rising and setting, the sun decreases the duration of life for everyone, except for one who utilizes his time in discussing the topics of the all-good Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, you know, we can give a whole class on that verse, but this is just to demonstrate that, yes, time is flying by so swiftly. And then we have the ears in the body, right? The snake with the 5 hooves are compared to the 5 ears in the body: prana, apana, vyana, udhana, and samana within the body. Srila Prabhupada describes that when one is asleep, the pran vayu is active. And we see that after the age of 50, the body becomes weak. The energy levels decrease. So, you know, yet people, they try to enjoy their senses and want to squeeze out as much pleasure they can get, you know, for sense enjoyment. And we see that old people, you know, people that are actually meant to be retired, right? In modern day society, what are they doing? Right? They are wasting their lives. And Prabhupada makes this very evident when he was in America and London and all these places, and he would see old people. What are they doing? They're playing golf, or they're playing, you know, they're running after a ball, you know, they're doing so many things, and they're just wasting away their lives. At this time, one should actually take up to the process of self-realization, at least, you know, and try to understand who you are. What are you doing in this world? And I'm going to die very soon. What, you know, what is my destination from here? But people have no concept of this, right? Especially in the West. And next we see the daughter of old age, right? Although nobody wants her, but she comes anyway. With old age comes many diseases, like arthritis, Alzheimer's, dementia, and so on. So the living entity has to go through all of these things, right? And nobody wants, here Prabhupada is in the purport of this text, is saying that nobody wants Kalakanya, nobody wants her, but she's actually, she goes to everyone, right? Old age, everybody is going to get old at some point. And Srila Prabhupada says that one should not wait for old age to take up to Krishna consciousness. One should do it immediately, right? In our youth, basically. When one is invalid, it will be difficult to practice Krishna consciousness due to loss of memory and the diseases that I mentioned. All right. So just something about myself. I was very fortunate to take up to the process of Krishna consciousness at the age of 16. Then I joined the temple in my late 20s, and I'm still here by the mercy of the Vaishnavas. My heart is not fully cleansed. I still have so many anarthas in the heart, but it's a gradual progress, right? Devotional service, a gradual progress in cleansing the heart. And I guess as long as we are in the boat of Krishna consciousness, we are safe and in the association of devotees. So in that way, we can make progress, right? So devotees, one thing I'd like to mention is please do not jump out of this boat of Krishna consciousness, especially the ISKCON boat, right? Because when you jump out of this boat, then, you know, Maya is just there to grab you. So, yeah, so like this, we should remain in the process of devotional service, in chanting our round, especially, you know. Srila Prabhupada says that the devotees who are preaching are beyond the jurisdiction of material laws. Now here he is given the example of Narad Muni, right? Because Kaliyuga wanted to attack Narad Muni, and you know, because he was a brahmachari, a staunch brahmachari, you know, she could not attack him, and he basically refused her demands, right? And because of Narad Muni being a devotee, he gave a shelter. And how did he give a shelter? By preaching. Yeah, and he basically mitigates bhaya or fear in those who follow his instructions. So those who are actually devotees, they are fearless, right? Prabhupada's name, he was given by his parents, Abhay Charana Ravinda, one who is fearless at the feet of Krishna. Kaliyuga then goes, or the daughter of time then goes to the Yavan king, right, the king of the Yavanas. But because he was a devotee, he sent Kaliyuga to his brother, and you know, it basically to those who do not follow Krishna consciousness. And we see that such people, you know, they become diseased and they cannot function. But in those purports, Prabhupada, please read the section of the Bhagavatam when you have some time. Canto 4 especially is full of so much of nectar, you know, in Prabhupada's purports. And Prabhupada says that those who do not take up to the process of worshipping the deity in the temple, or worshipping Krishna, basically, they will feel the effects of Kaliyuga, the daughter of time. They will feel her effects. And then comes Jara, which is old age and disease, basically, and you know, they will feel all these effects. But Prabhupada says those who have taken up to Krishna consciousness won't feel the effects of old age and you know, and all these diseases he's mentioned, because you know, even a person who is immersed in Krishna consciousness, like, you know, just take for example our gurus, right? They have reached a ripe old age of 70 plus, you know, but you find them in the latest Sadhu Sangha festival, they were jumping and dancing. And although they have, their body may be diseased to some degree, but it never shows, right? They are so youthful. Now in the material world, if you think of the people, other people who are not devotees in the material world, at the age of 70, what are they doing? I know of so many people at the age of 70 and, you know, 70, 75, and they are basically totally out of it. You know, they're either suffering with Alzheimer's, or they have so many diseases in their bodies, and you know, they can't function. They just have to sit one place. And but devotees of Krishna, you know, especially our sannyasis and those who have taken up the preaching movement, you know, and who are preaching this science of Krishna consciousness to the masses, basically, you look at them, they are full of youth, basically. And you know, sometimes I feel so ashamed of myself, because being so young, I also have so many you know, types of illnesses. But we find that our gurus, on the other hand, although they have all these impediments, but they are full of life, right? So we see that Prabhupada's purport is actually, you know, it's coming alive when we look at these examples around us. So yeah, then I was going to speak on King Vena. King Vena is also another character in the Bhagavatam that you know, he was basically elected by the saints to take over the kingdom, because there was no one to rule, and they basically asked him to take the reins, you know, and to lead the nation. But King Vena, you know, he was another character. So we'll just read this quickly about the story of King Vena from the Bhagavatam, also Canto 4, chapter 14. So we'll just read the text, right? And maybe just one purport we'll go over. So the story of King Vena. The great sage Maitreya continued, "O great hero Vidura, the great sage was headed by Bhrigu, were always thinking of the welfare of the people in general. When they saw that in the absence of King Anga, there was no one to protect the interest of the people, they understood that without a ruler, the people would become independent and non-regulated." Text 2, the great sages then called for the queen mother, Sunita, and with her permission, they installed Vena on the throne as master of the world. All the ministers, however, disagreed with this. Text 3, it was already known that Vena was very severe and cruel. Therefore, as soon as all the thieves and rogues in the state heard of this ascendance to the royal throne, they became very much afraid of him. Indeed, they hid themselves here and there as rats hide themselves from snakes. Right? We see that King Vena was a very cruel person, but he somehow, the saints, they put him as the king. And when the rogues and thieves heard about this, you know, they became very much afraid of him. Text 4, when the king ascended the throne, he became all powerful with 8 kinds of opulences. Consequently, he became too proud. By virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone. Thus, he began to insult great personalities. When he became overly blind due to his opulences, King Vena mounted a chariot and, like an uncontrolled elephant, began to travel through the kingdom, causing the sky and earth to tremble wherever he went. All the twice-born Brahmanas were forbidden henceforward to perform any sacrifice, and they were also forbidden to give charity or offer clarified butter. Thus King Vena sounded kettle drums throughout the countryside. In other words, he stopped all kinds of religious rituals. Text 7. Therefore, all the great sages assembled together after observing cruel Vena's atrocities, concluded that a great danger and catastrophe was approaching the people of the world. Thus, out of compassion, they began to talk amongst themselves, for they themselves were the performers of the sacrifices. 8. When the great sages consulted one another, they saw that the people were in a dangerous position from both directions. When a fire blazes on both ends of a log, the ants in the middle are in a very dangerous situation. Similarly, at that time, the people in general were in a dangerous position due to an irresponsible king on one side and thieves and rogues on the other. Text 9. Thinking to save the state from irregularities, the sages began to consider that it was due to a political crisis that they made Vena king, although he was not qualified. But alas, now the people were being disturbed by the king himself. Under such circumstances, how could the people be happy? The sages began to think within themselves. Because he was born from the womb of Sunita, King Vena is by nature very mischievous. Supporting his mischievous king is exactly like maintaining a snake with milk. Now he has become a source of all difficulties. 11. We appointed this Vena king of state in order to give protection to the citizens, but now he has become the enemy of the citizens. Despite all discrepancies, we should at once try to pacify him. By doing so, we may not be touched by sinful results caused by him. Text 12. The saintly king continued, thinking, of course, we were completely aware of his mischievous nature, yet we nevertheless enthroned Vena. If we cannot persuade King Vena to accept our advice, he will be condemned by the public and we will join them. Thus, by our prowess, we shall burn him to ashes. 13. The great sages, having thus decided, approached King Vena, concealing their real anger. They pacified him with sweet words and they spoke as follows. The great sages said, "Dear King, we have come to give you good advice. Kindly hear us with great attention. By doing so, your duration of life and opulence, strength and reputation will increase. Those who live according to religious principles and who follow them by words, mind, body, and intelligence are elevated to the heavenly kingdom, which is devoid of all miseries. Being thus rid of the material influence, they achieve unlimited happiness in life." The sages continued, "O great hero, for this reason, you should not be the cause of spoiling the spiritual life of the general populace. If their spiritual life is spoiled because of your activities, you will certainly fall down from your opulent and royal position." So, dear devotees, in bygone days, the Kshatriyas or the administrative class, right, the kings and so on, they were given advice by the Brahmanas, by the saintly persons, right, by the saints. So they were given advice on how to rule the kingdom. So here we see that the sages are telling Vena, giving him advice, although he was a thief himself and, a pickpocketer and, all kinds of things. So they're giving him advice on how to rule so that, everything will run smoothly. But we see that, as we will see in the coming verses, that King Vena does not heed to this advice. So let's continue. The saintly kings continued, when the king protects the citizens from the disturbance of mischievous ministers, as well as from thieves and rogues, he can, by virtue of such pious activities, accept taxes given by his subjects. Thus, a pious king can certainly enjoy himself in this world as well as in life after death. The king is supposed to be pious in whose state the citizens and general populace strictly observe the system of 8 social orders of Varna and Ashrama. And where all citizens engage in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in their particular occupations. O noble one, if the king sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original cause of the cosmic manifestation, and the super soul within everyone is worshipped, the Lord will be satisfied. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped by the demigods, who are the controllers of the universal affairs. When he is satisfied, nothing is impossible to achieve. For this reason, all the demigods, presiding deities of different planets, as well as the inhabitants of their planets, take great pleasure in offering all kinds of paraphernalia for his worship. Text 21. Dear King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with the predominating deities, is the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices of all planets. The Supreme Lord is the sum total of the 3 Vedas, the owner of everything, and the ultimate good of all austerities. Therefore, your countrymen should engage in performing various sacrifices for your elevation. Indeed, you should always direct them towards the offering of sacrifice. So basically, they're giving King Vena all these such nice advice, but he doesn't want to take it. So we'll just carry on reading. 1 second. Yeah. So text 21. 22. When all the Brahmanas engage in performing sacrifices in your kingdom, all the demigods, who are plenary expansions of the Lord, will be very much satisfied by their activities and will give you your desired result. Therefore, O hero, do not stop the sacrificial performances. If you stop them, you will disrespect the demigods. Now listen to King Vena's reply. King Vena replied, you are not at all experienced. He's telling this to the sages, right? You are not at all experienced. It is very much regrettable that you are maintaining something which is not religious and accepting it as religious. Indeed, I think you are giving up your real husband who maintains you and are searching after some paramour for worship. So, he's basically saying that, you're giving up me, you're the king, and you're looking elsewhere. You're looking up to the demigods and to God, for your shelter. But I am the king. I am the person that you're supposed to be worshiping, and you're not worshiping me, right? So text 24, those who out of great ignorance do not worship the king, who is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, experience happiness neither in this world nor in the world after death. Right? You are so devoted to the demigods, but who are they? Indeed, your affection for these demigods is exactly like affection for an unchaste woman who neglects her married life and gives all attention to her paramour. Right, 26 and 27. Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, Vayu, the master of air, Yama, the superintendent of death, the sun god, the director of rainfall, Kuvera, the treasurer, the moon god, the predominating deity of the earth, Agni, and the fire god, Varuna, the lord of the waters, and all others who are great and competent to bestow benedictions or to curse, all abide in the body of the king. For this reason, the king is known as the reservoir of all demigods, who are simply parts and parcels of the king's body. So King Vena, he knows all this. He knows the Vedas, right? And he knows all of this, but he's using it not for the benefit of the people, but to actually go against them. So King Vena continued, for this reason, O Brahmanas, you should abandon your envy for me, and by your ritualistic activities, you should worship me and offer me all paraphernalia. If you are intelligent, you should know that there is no personality superior to me who can accept the first oblations of all sacrifice. So you see how conceited he is, right? And he thinks that everything is going on because of him. But it was the sages who actually put him there, you know, and now he's basically going against them. So the great sage Maitreya continued, thus the king who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the request of the great sages, which the sages before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. My dear Vidura, all good fortune unto you, the foolish king, who thought himself very learned, thus insulted the great sages, and the sages, being broken-hearted by the king's words, became very angry with him. All the great saintly sages immediately cried, kill him, kill him. He is the most dreadful, sinful person. If he lives, he will certainly turn the whole world into ashes in no time. The great sages continued, this impious, impudent man does not deserve to sit on the throne at all. He is so shameless that he even dared insult the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. But for King Vena, who is simply inauspicious, who would blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose mercy one is awarded all kinds of good fortune and opulence, the great sages, thus manifesting their covert anger, immediately decided to kill the king. King Vena was already as good as dead due to his blasphemy against the Supreme Lord. Thus, without using any weapons, the sages killed Vena simply by high-sounding words. So basically, they chanted mantras and they killed him, right? They got rid of him. So that is how powerful the Brahmanas were in those days. Just by chanting mantras, you know, they could remove poison from someone's body. If a snake bit somebody, and you know, all they needed to do was to recite some mantras, and the poison would actually be removed. So here as well, they just had to chant the mantras, and King Vena was no more, right? After all the sages turned to their respective hermitage, the mother of King Vena, Sunita, became very much aggrieved because of her son's death. She decided to preserve the dead body of her son by application of certain ingredients and by chanting mantras, mantra yogena. 36. Once upon a time, the saintly persons, after taking their bath in the river Saraswati, began to perform their daily duties by offering oblations into those sacrificial fires. After this, sitting on the bank of the river, they began to talk about the transcendental person and his pastimes. In those days, there were various disturbances in the country that created a panic in society. Therefore, all the sages began to talk amongst themselves. Since the king is dead and there is no protector in the world, misfortune may befall the people in general on account of rogues and thieves. So in those days, there was one emperor of the world, like how Maharaj Yudhisthira, he became the emperor of the world, you know. So yeah, text 38. When the great sages were carrying on their discussion in this way, they saw a dust storm arising from all directions. This storm was caused by the running of thieves and rogues who were engaged in plundering the citizens. So because there is no government, then you know, the thieves and the rogues became very expert in plundering the citizens. Well, we even see that in nowadays as well, because of the weak government we have. There's so much of crime in society, especially here in South Africa. Right, so text 39 and 40. So I won't be long with this. Just a few more verses and then we'll be done. Yeah. So text 39 and 40. Upon seeing the dust storm, the saintly persons could understand that there were a great deal of irregularities due to the death of King Vena. Without government, the state is devoid of law and order, and consequently there was a great uprising of murderous thieves and rogues who were plundering the riches of the people in general. Although the great sages could subdue the disturbance by their power, just as they could kill the king, they considered it improper to do on their part to do so. Thus they did not attempt to stop the disturbance. After the great sages began to think that although a Brahmana is peaceful and impartial because he is equal to everyone, it is still not his duty to neglect poor humans. By such neglect, a Brahmana's spiritual power diminishes, just as water kept in a cracked pot leaks out. 42. The great sages decided that the descendants of the family of the king, of King Anga, should not be stopped, for in his family the semen was very powerful and the children were prone to become devotees of the Lord. After making a decision, the saintly persons and sages churned the thighs of the dead body of King Vena with great force and according to a specific method. As a result of this churning, a dwarf-like person was born from King Vena's body. This person born from King Vena's thighs was named Bahuka, and his complexion was as black as a crow's. All the limbs of his bodies were very short. His arms and legs were short, and his jaws were large. His nose was flat. His eyes were reddish, and his hair copper colored. He was very submissive and weak, and immediately after his birth, he bowed down and inquired, "Sirs, what shall I do?" The great sage replied, "Please sit down, Nisida." Thus Nisada, the father of the Nisada race, was born. After Nisada's birth, he immediately took charge of all the resultant actions of King Vena's sinful activities. As such, this Nisada class are always engaged in sinful activities like stealing, plundering, and hunting. Consequently, they are only allowed to live in the hills and the forests. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees, this is the end of that narration. But we see in the next chapter, we won't go there, but in the next chapter that they churned King Vena's arms, and from that came King Prithu, who is an empowered personality by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, an incarnation actually. And when he reigned, then there was all prosperity, right? King Prithu. So yes, so this is an example of the plunderers, who take positions as kings and leaders of society, but they actually the plunderers of the wealth of the people in the form of taxes, and they use it for their own demise, right? So we'll stop there now, and if anyone has any questions or would like to contribute, you're most welcome to do so.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for a wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
Marge, do you mind quickly just going over the analogy 1 and 2 quickly, just a quick summary of what it means, just for the newcomers?
Oh, okay. Analogy 1 and 2.
Yeah, just a quick summary of the, the concluding and what it's about,
Okay, the first analogy was the arrival of clouds accompanied by thunder and flashes of lightning all over the sky provides a picture of life, giving hope. Covered by deep bluish clouds, the sky appears artificially dressed. The thunder and lightning within the sky are signs of hope for a new way of life. So here we discussed about the different types of philosophies and the monist theory and the dualists and the Achintya Veda Tattva, and the 3 modes of material nature also, and how the living entity fell from grace, and now he's struggling to survive in this material world, and comes in contact with ahankara or false ego, and he's totally bewildered. So we spoke something about that, and then we spoke something about the Parichinibari, King Parichinibari, who actually who took the body as himself, and he tried to enjoy his life like that. So the different elements of this analogy in the Prabhupada gives in the purport there, that the dark clouds, the whole sky is compared to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The clouds, the dark clouds of ignorance, the living entity falls into this world and is covered by ignorance. And so then Prabhupada speaks about the mode of tamas, and which is ignorance, right? And the forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord, and then the living entity gets into a mood of separatism. Basically, he thinks about himself only, and he does not inquire about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He thinks in terms of I, me, and mine, like that. So the second analogy, the scorching heat of the sun evaporates water from the seas, rivers, lakes, and reservoirs, and there is little water anywhere. The people become thirsty and always look ahead for rain, but in despair. Yet, just at the right moment, torrents of rain begin to fall everywhere in the land, even on hard stones, and the land becomes overflooded. Then here we spoke about the Prabhupada. He makes a point of saying that the welfare state imposes upon its citizens scorching taxes in the form of income tax, sales tax, land tax, terminal tax, etc. Right, and basically the government officials use these taxes for their own sense gratification. They squander it for themselves, and they don't distribute the taxes equally, like that. So and I was making the point of how we have the same case in South Africa, when during the floods, the citizens had to get together, the ratepayers had to get together and build up the broken bridges, and the government basically had no hand in that, and the citizens did it themselves. So it's so apt in today's world. We're seeing this all around us, of how this is so true, right? And this analogy is just it's like so true, of what's going on in today's society, right? And then we spoke about King Vena and how he became the king, and he was a thief, a rogue, and a robber himself. And the other thieves and robbers were actually scared of him, but he plundered the citizens basically. And when the sages tried to give him good advice, he did not take that advice, but instead he insulted them. And in this way, we see how the sages got rid of King Vena, and they eventually enthroned, King Prithu to rule the world, basically. So, yeah, so that's a summary of today's verse, and yes, the last on Sunday's verse. So thank you very much. If we can end with the kirtan.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
But I'd like to give others an opportunity to speak. Give me your thoughts on this verse and purport that we have read. So you can please share something now. I'd really like to hear from you. Maybe I'll just call out some names, right? Nalina, Hare Krishna. Nalina, do you have some thoughts on this? You can unmute and speak. Okay, if she's not inclined, then we can go to Ravindra Chauhan, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for the nice class.
Hare Krishna. Share your thoughts on this topic, Prabhu.
I don't have anything particular to share, Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Saranga Sundari Mataji, it's so nice to have you. Please share something with us.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you for having me, and thank you very much for the class. Hare Krishna, all the dear devotees. Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Very nice share. We're learning a lot, and I look forward to joining your next class.
Thank you. Anyone else like to say something?
Hare Krishna Mataji, it's Nalina.
Hare Krishna, Nalina.
Hare Krishna devotees. What I would like to just say is that this plundering, looting, and maladministration has been going on for centuries in the past. And in now, it's actually going to increase at such a vast pace in every country in the world. And it is something that's going to be unstoppable. And it is something that the citizens have to live with unless they hold the state accountable and make sure that what they do is transparent. And I really enjoyed today's discussion. It was very enlightening, King Vena, and also about the analogies that the two that you spoke about. Absolutely interesting. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Nalina. Yes, so Prabhupada actually makes a point in the purport, and he says, if the citizens take up to this process of, yagya, or performance of sacrifices, and in this stage, the Sankirtan yagya is recommended, then, everything will come right, everything will be nice. Even the administration will go on well if the Sankirtan Yagya is actually put into place. So the onus is up to us now as devotees to take this chanting of Hare Krishna, throughout the world, and every city, every town, every village. So, and propagate this Sankirtan movement. So it's up to us. In whichever small way we can do, we are most welcome to do it. And Prabhupada is urging us to do this, right? And he says that not only will the citizens benefit, but we as well as devotees will benefit from that. So with that, let's get on with the chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jai Radha, Radha Nat Radha, Radha Nat Radhe, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we had a very long session today and therefore a short kirtan. So thank you very much for joining us. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors in preaching Krishna consciousness in whichever way you seem fit. Hare Krishna.